That's right. Let's be recorded. So, good afternoon, Debbie. Thank you for joining me for afternoon tea.
Thank you for inviting me. I feel really honored to be on your tea party show. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. So my first question to you was, what was your childhood like?
I had a really relaxed childhood because I was brought up in the Caribbean.
Mm-hmm.
And everything we had in terms of toys, we made a lot of stuff. Although, the fact that my mom was in England and we had other family abroad, we always used to get, like barrels, we got boxes with various toys, etc. So in terms of, my childhood, I'll see it as a very happy childhood. It was very, very happy.
Mm-hmm.
Very
Yeah.
happy. Very happy.
So you were brought up in the Caribbean?
Yes.
And then your family came across to England?
Yes. They came across to England, they left us when we were small and they came over.
Mm-hmm.
And with the hope of rejoining, like joining at some stage. But being brought up by your grandparents in the Caribbean is a situation where they don't normally, in a lot of cases, want you to leave them because they see you as the pride and joy.
Mm-hmm. So your grandparents never came across with you?
No.
No.
They stayed in there. I had an aunt who came up before me. A grandaunt, my mom's aunt, came over before me. That was, when my grandma passed, I stayed with my aunt because it was, the extended family.
Mm-hmm. So did you go to school in England or was it the Caribbean?
Well, I had school in the Caribbean and I had school in England. My schooling in the Caribbean was fantastic in the sense that education was very, very important and is still very important in the Caribbean. There was no choice that you had to go to school anyway because that was part of the whole life. Mm-hmm. And school for me, I enjoy school because my family, had uncles that were teachers. My aunt was teachers. In my whole family, there were teachers, nurses, doctors, solicitors. Those are the professions in my family. Mm-hmm. So therefore, you had no choice. It never entered your head that you don't want to go to school, right? Because, But when I came over to England, it wasn't that nice. Mm-hmm. Because it was a whole new world. Because being brought up in the Caribbean, where in terms of my childhood, I had everything I wanted. Some people might be saying that you were spoiled. I don't see that as being spoiled. Whereas when I came over to England, it was something different. In the Caribbean, I enjoy school, I like school. When I came here, it was a rude awakening, and I came during the time of Roots. So people who know Roots, when Roots actually came on the television, that was the time I came over. Mm-hmm. Not knowing anything about television, because in the Caribbean, although, you had everything, you didn't have a television. Television wasn't, your only scene of a film was going into the cinema. So actually when I came here and seeing this on the television, for a start, I couldn't understand the television anyway. Right. And then having to see this program, I'm thinking, oh my goodness. So that was, I was taking on a different journey. The fact was, when going into the school, because the area I lived in is a very predominant white at the time, but now it's very multicultural. Mm-hmm. And in the class, there were very few Black children. So at the time for me, I didn't even know what racism was. I didn't even understand it. When people saying to me that I swing on trees, and throwing bananas at me, and then telling me I had rubber lips. Oh my goodness. It was a different something. It was a shock because I didn't even know what was that, and telling me that I was Kizi and Kunta Kinte, and then I was forced to look at this program, and I thought, okay, this is it. So my childhood in terms of my education in England wasn't a very positive one. Because coming from the Caribbean with a strong Caribbean accent, I still have an accent. It's quite obvious that I had a strong one, right? Where teachers didn't understand you and they had no patience to listen to you. So although, in terms of being bright in the Caribbean, when I came to this country, when I knew an answer and I put my hand up, the teachers ignored me. So I thought, you know what? There is no point in talking anymore. So I stopped talking. There's no point. It's interesting because you could have very powerful and positive support when you go home. But because you spend so much of your time in the school, and with the teachers being the prominent individual in your life, it's very damaging. Because in terms of my self-esteem, my self-confidence, it was zero. I cried every day at school. When you cry until you're weak, that was me. I cried until a week. And I didn't even realize that was bullying until I became older, because I was bullied in the school. The teachers ignored me. When I tell the teacher, when I went and complained about what happened, the teacher just ignored me even more. It was powerful because, one of the guys, was saying to me that I was like Tarzan. I didn't even know who Tarzan was because we swing on trees. I think, what is this? And then he would throw bananas at me and say, this is what you eat. And the interesting thing about that, I was reflecting on what you said on Sunday, because I was being bullied by the white children as well as the black children. There were 2 black girls in my class. And one of them said to me that I had rubber lips, and I didn't understand what she meant. So when I came home, I told, I was talking to my mom about it, she was saying to me, no, you're fine, you're beautiful. So it's like pumping all this into me and going back to school, and you're getting a knockback. So it didn't make a difference. And the interesting thing about it, one of the women who was bullying me at school, she and I, become, the fact that you're now mature, we're very good friends now.
Yeah.
And I told her about it. I said, you remember when you used to bully me? You bullied me not because so much you wanted to, but because someone forced you to do that. So it was, those things were really, really interesting, because even when I actually said to the career officer that I wanted to become a medical researcher, she looked at me and she said, no. She said, what you should do is become a nursing assistant. Because she said that nursing assistant, or SEN nurse at the time, she said takes 2 years and you don't need qualification for nursing assistants. So I came home because I thought I was good, right? I came home and I said to my mom, because at the time my mom was doing, she was a registered nurse at the time. I think she was doing midwifery, I can't remember. And I said to her, oh, Mom, I wanted to be a nurse. And Miss Grace said that I could do 2 years, either become a nursing assistant or become an SEN nurse for 2 years. Oh my goodness. My mom went mad. She went mad. She said, go back and tell Miss Gray that you could do whatever you want to do. She cannot tell you what you want to do. So I went back and I said to the woman, my mother said I could do whatever I want to do. She looked at me and she said, you'll amount to nothing. Okay. So those were my experience at school. And even when I had to do my O-levels, at the time it was CSC, I think, yes. They had prevented me from doing the O-levels because they felt that I wasn't bright enough to do it. And if I wanted to do the O-levels, my parents would have to pay for it. Well, when it comes to education, from the Caribbean, education is, they would do anything for education. So as far as my mom concerned, that's fine. So all my subject, I was doubled. I paid for the O-levels, and the CSEs I took free. The O-levels I passed, the CSE I didn't. So it was a real, my schooling in this country was a rude awakening, because the sense that coming from places where nobody told you about you had rubber lips, nobody told you, you swung from trees or throw bananas at you, to come into a situation of that. I hated school. I hated being in this country. Every day I would say to my mom, I want to go back home. But the fact is, she couldn't send us back home because, my aunt was up here, and my other aunt, who was a headmistress, she felt that at this time, you should be with your parents, etc., etc. So it was a journey, an interesting journey on reflection.
Yeah.
But at the time, you were in it.
So how old were you when you actually came to England?
I came to England between 12 to 13, 14, around those age group. So which means that when I actually went in school, they've only just started secondary school.
Secondary.
Started
secondary
school.
That's it. So have you got any siblings? And if so, are they older or younger?
Well, I've got older and younger.
So you're in the middle.
Yes, I'm in the middle.
So how was the relationship between your siblings? Was it a good relationship? Did they get bullied, or?
The thing is, my younger sister came up with me. So therefore, her life was very different, because she came up to primary school. And in primary school, experiences were very different. Because she also had a cousin that was the same age as her, so therefore that was fine. Whereas when I came up, although I had cousins who went to the same school as I was in, they were younger than me. So therefore we were not in the same class. Whereas my sister and her cousin, they were in the same class. So therefore you had that, that connection and that bonding. It does make a lot of difference, because she had someone she could, because they came home together, my aunt picked them up together. But whereas with me, my cousins, they were younger, so they went home before me, things like that.
And what about your older siblings?
Right, they didn't even, the fact is they didn't travel until it was later, and they actually went to America instead of coming to England.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So you finished school.
Mm-hmm.
So what did you do? Did you go into further education? Stop on and do your A-levels?
I did my, the thing is, it's interesting because I did my A-levels at school. I stayed on at school, although school was awful, I ended up being by myself.
Yeah.
So I stayed on at school. When I finished, I didn't know what I wanted to do, because when people actually say something to you that you'll amount to nothing, it doesn't matter what your parents say to you, because educators are seen as whatever they say is gospel, and whatever say make a real powerful impact on how you navigate from there on. Unless you have very high self-esteem or high confidence. And even though you have high confidence, when a teacher says something to you, a teacher says it. So I left school, I did my A-levels, then I didn't know what I wanted to do. I came out, I did all kind of rubbish jobs. I did care assistant, I work as a carer, I work in a laundrette, I work in a shop. I did every single nonsense. I didn't know what I wanted to do, because I was lost.
You were lost.
Completely lost.
Yeah. So when did you decide to go self-employed then? Was it after all those
No.
don't know what I'm doing, or?
I was completely lost. And then, you know, one day I was just thinking, I said, okay, I need to do something. So then I went to university and I did a first degree I did business studies. When I did business studies, it was interesting though, because I met this, I did an HND business studies first. And I met this teacher who said to me, you know, I was sitting in the back. And then one of my friends said to me, because a friend I just met, she had said to me, should we sit in the front? Bearing in mind, you know, 2 years, I bum around, didn't know what I wanted to do. And we sat in the front and I'm sitting there and this teacher is asking questions because I read a lot. And she was asking questions about business studies and I thinking, should I put my hand up? And I put my hand up and she said, yes, Deborah. Oh my goodness. As if my world opened up. Someone wanted to listen to me. And I gave her the answer and she said, yes. Her name was Josephine. I could never forget that woman. She actually opened the door to me in terms of having the confidence that I needed. From that day, I never, ever sat in the back of a class. So she was, you know, she was instrumental because she didn't know what I was going through, but I knew what I went through. So when an educator wanted to hear what you had to say, that's powerful.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, because I'm thinking, oh my goodness, because when I put my hand up, I think, should I put it up? Should I not? Should I put it up? Should I not? And I'm thinking, okay. And it's like I'm hearing my heart beating, but I still put my hand up. And then she said, yes, Deborah, thinking, whoa, it was fantastic. It was the opening to Debbie talking and never shutting up. You know, so when I finished business study, I then went on to do, I did a social science degree, specializing in psychology. And then I just, you know, went on and did masters and did, PGC, et cetera, et cetera. You know, so I've done quite a lot of those things. And I did then I work in the community, I taught in prisons. I did a whole lot of stuff. And all of this in terms of when I was, you know, educated in prison, you were self-employed. Then I became a coach for parents, that was self-employed. So I did self-employment, but not on a full scale. Even now, I am not fully self-employed. I'm self-employed, but I'm still teaching as and when.
Yeah. And what age group are you teaching?
Right, I did primary, secondary, university, college, and I'm now come back to, in the last 18 months, I'm actually doing secondary sixth form college. So I'm looking at those who are doing A-levels, you know, either in psychology or social science or whatever.
So what do you put your success down to?
Oh my goodness. Personally, it has to do with a lot of my experience. Because for me, in terms of success, when I get a student to shift, or my educators to shift their mindsets from thinking negatively about themselves or their self-worth, for me, that is success. It is success for me and it's success for them. And I feel that when I actually bring these things, I'm bringing it from a place of my experience and how it felt to be like that. And I think not always we are able to use our personal experiences because we cannot make so many mistakes that we learn from our mistakes. You know, sometimes we have to learn from other people's mistakes, but it becomes more powerful when you are coming from a place of empathy and your own experience. You empathize. You do not know exactly what that individual is feeling because we all have different feelings, etc., and emotions, but you've got a very good idea because you've been on that journey.
Okay. So what do you do in your job? Is it just teaching, or is
No.
it more mentoring or helping other teachers? Because you're classed as an educator.
Yeah.
What does that actually mean?
Well, I see educators as being wider than just teaching, because as an educator, we wear so many hats. Even as a teacher, you wear so many hats.
Yeah.
You are counselor, although in some cases, educators are not trained counselors. But for me, because I've done all those training, I'm fortunate because I've done all those things because of my psychology. I've expressed it widely. So I would coach female educators who've lost the passion. So it's like get them to reconnect with the passion, because although there's still, there's a small light there, but because of all the negative they've had about themselves and where they're at, the passion and the purpose get lost. So I empower them to reconnect, to reclaim and reignite the passion and the purpose for education again, because I'm really passionate about education. I love it with a passion. So that's one aspect I do. I then do a lot of empowerment and transformation of educators and students, because my background is a psychologist, so therefore I use that quite a lot, because the mind is very powerful. As I say to all my students, the mind is very powerful. It could either make you or break you. So you decide what you want this powerful mind to do, because whatever you decide you want it to do, believe me, it will do it. So in terms of getting, especially students, getting them to realize that you are enough. It's okay to make the mistakes. We are all on a journey and we all are work in progress, So that's one aspect. So it's like I coach educators, I do a lot of self-development and personal development in terms of within education, continuing professional development. I do a lot of that as well. And I also mentor young people, and I also mentor a few, students from university as well. I'm in this group called the 100 Black Men of London, where I mentor especially young boys. So that's an aspect I do as well, mentoring these young people, because a lot of them are lost.
Yeah. So is it mainly the black boys, or is it the white boys as well that you?
Right. In the 100 Black Men of London, because they've got a branch in America and there's a branch in the Caribbean, it's Black boys and girls or mixed race children. But when it comes to me mentoring with the university, I mentor any young person. It tend to be my last two mentees were, oh my goodness, my last two mentees were, they were doing psychology and they wanted a mentor who had the psychology background because they felt it would be easier for them, etc. But I've mentored other students who were non-psychologists, just mentor, things like that. So those are some of the things that I do.
Okay. So how can we help you with what you're doing? Is there anything that the group can help you with and support you with?
Yeah, it'll be nice in terms of collaboration. In terms of, because another thing I do two other things, just remembered. I've got two platforms. One of them is called Talk Everything Education, where I look at the mental health of educators and students. I look at, on the platform, I would have educators from around the world who are suffering from stress that have actually made them, at breakout points. And on that platform, I have health and wellness practitioner, the one you were on. whereby we find tools to empower educators that they could use these tools to help themselves with the mental health issues before they actually become broken and before the students become broken. Because it's easier to fix an academic child than to fix a broken child and a broken educator. So that's the purpose of me doing that platform. And I have educators from around the world, and I have health and wellness practitioners from around the world. So it's been fantastic. I then have another platform that is called the Female Educators Roundtable. That is where I only have female educators because I'm a coach for female educators. And on that platform, I speak to female educators from around the world again who have been teaching during the lockdown and who had to navigate a new normal, because we are used to, as educators, teaching in a physical classroom, and we are social beings, and we used to coming up close to our students and empowering them, and if we see them sleeping, we kind of give them a little nudge, etc. So we had to learn this online platform, and a lot of educators are struggling. So on that platform, I give it's a safe space for them to talk about some of the struggles. However, we must always remember life is not only about struggles, there are also triumph as well. So I'm saying to them, okay, you are struggling, but tell me the good things. There are good things in it, you know. And it's like for some of them who are so overwhelmed, they find it difficult to pull the triumphs from this online teaching. But there's a lot of triumph because we've learned a new skill. Because if we did not have COVID, educators would have been still stuck where they are. Because that is one profession. And educators out there, you guys might be annoyed with me, but there's one profession where there have been no shift. Every profession you could think about, they have had shifts. They have shift in terms of, you know, using technology to do what they have to do. But in education, we were stuck. We haven't been moving. Because when you look at the classroom when my great-great-great-grandparents were in, and you look at the classroom now, it's the same thing. You know, we don't have the blackboards anymore. We have sophisticated whiteboard. But a lot of educators do the same thing. And COVID have taught us to be innovative and creative. You know, so that's the platform, you know, in terms of the Female Educators Roundtable, getting them to see, okay, it's bad, I understand, but we need to take the good bits and run with the good bits and use it as development and use it as being innovative and use it to differentiate in terms of how people are now learning. You know, so that, you know, that's the purpose of that platform, because educators are feeling overwhelmed, and also encouraging them to feel that you are not alone in the struggle, you know, everybody else is struggling. You
That's
know?
it.
Yeah, but we need to move on. We can't be stuck.
No, that's it. That's it. So if you lived your life again, would you change anything?
Yes. What I would change is I would go into self-employment much earlier. And maybe I'm still, you know, grappling with that, whether or not because I actually promote, what's it called? Apprenticeship. I promote apprenticeship in a big way, because I think people's mindset is stuck on, you go to university, you get a degree, etc. I'm saying to my student, when you come out with a degree, it's a dead degree. You cannot do anything with it. Whereas if you do an apprenticeship, you could do a whole load of stuff, get paid and being employed, and you don't come out with a big student loan. So if I would live my life again, what I say to my young self as well, you know, do an apprenticeship. Yes, do a degree as well, but instead of doing, degrees, just do a degree and do an apprenticeship. Because apprenticeship has a lot to offer.
Yeah.
A lot more than a degree. And I constantly discourage students as much as I can to not do a degree except the degree has something attached to it. Because many degrees, when you come out with a dead degree, you still have to do something else with it. You can't run with it. Whereas if you do an apprenticeship, you could run with the apprenticeship because you're being taught on the job while still getting a degree.
Yeah.
So that's what I would tell that, that's something I've been talking to my young self, my younger self about.
Yeah. Okay. Is there any questions that you'd like to ask Mandy?
Yeah, Debbie, I'd like to ask you a question. And you said you worked in the prison.
Yeah.
Yes. Was it a women's, a female's prison, or was it a men's prison?
It's interesting because, sorry, finish, Mama. Sorry, finish. Are you finished?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yes. I worked in a male prison and I work in female prison.
Okay.
Because I felt that it was necessary that I worked in both prisons. And I worked with prisoners who were lifers, and I worked with prisoners who were sex abusers, sex offenders, the whole shebang. Because initially because when I did various classes, I was told, this is the guys from the 5, which means that they are sex offenders. And I thought, oh my goodness, how am I going to deal with this? A female educators, etc. But it was interesting because they were very receptive because they were eager to come out of the cell and they were eager to learn because they know that if they actually came out of the cell, they would be learning something. And when you're actually teaching in prisons and you're in prisons with category 5 prisoners that have committed really, really bad crimes, you do have police officers, prison officers in the classroom with you. So that was one of the things that was uncomfortable for me, having prison officers in the classroom with me, until, I would say to them, I'm okay, I'm okay. So, you could be outside of the door. So after a while, they were comfortable enough to be outside of the door, but they would have the classroom door open. I must say, I never felt being in danger. Probably so naive. I've never felt being in danger.
Okay.
Did I answer your question?
Yeah, it did. And how long did you work there?
Oh my goodness. Probably for about 9 or 10 years.
Oh, a long time then.
Yes, but it's part-time. I work part-time while still having another part-time job because I didn't want to give it up. I loved it so much. I didn't want to give it up. It was really nice because I taught in different prisons.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I taught in different prisons.
So what did you actually teach in prison?
Oh my goodness. I taught English. I taught current affairs. I taught maths. Anything there was a need. Because sometimes you go in there and the guys are locked up or the women are locked up and they're saying, okay, well, the other teacher, there's sometimes your subject, there may not be a lot of them for your subject, so you might combine, because I teach sociology as well and psychology. So if there is a situation where the guys are going to be locked up, I just taught a subject because I feel it was important that they came out of the cell.
And how long were the lessons for?
The lessons vary. Sometimes it could be an hour, sometimes an hour and a half. sometimes 50 minutes. You see, the lessons also depended upon how many prison officers they had on duty and whether or not that prison officers were in favor of education. If they're not in favor of education, they would just keep the guys locked up. So there's sometimes I would be going in there and I may not have a class because there may not be enough prison officers. Or if they had a riot on one of the wing, the prison officer saying, well, they're not going to let the guys out.
Yeah.
So it was, it was all those psychology, they were playing with the guys. And it was frustrating because there's sometimes when you might have 2 lessons and you sit in the 2 lessons and you say to the officers, come on, you guys are not doing anything. It's okay, let them out, etc. So that sometimes you have to play with the officers to let them out. It depends on their mindset as well. It's challenging. Some might argue that, okay, they're prisoners, they commit crime, so therefore they should not be entitled to education. But then you have human rights aspect of this. Because they've got human rights. Okay, they've committed a crime, but they have human rights, because they're human beings. So we need to also take those into consideration. And it's very, very important.
Is there any more questions, Mandy?
Yeah, another question is, what is your future? How's your future going to be in the next months, the rest of this year or next year?
Well, with COVID, for me, it sounds bad, but for me, I feel that COVID actually have been a developmental process. And it's a transformation for me because it had enabled me to do a lot of things that while I was teaching, especially a few months before COVID, I was just running. I was doing my business, get up all in the morning, doing my business, running to this school, running to that school. I would be, in one school because I am not on any of the staff because I chose not to be. Because it's nice to see how other school operates, so therefore I could see how things are going and therefore I could bring different things to school. Whereas, I've been in the situation where I've been in one school for 10 years, 7 years, whatever, and there's no growth for me. I grew because I'm that kind of transformational individual. So for me, COVID actually gave me that, it gave me like a light to rest, to implement a lot more self-care. And I've started a book some time ago, and this is what I'm on the journey finishing off. I am doing a lot more in my business because I am now choosing my hours of work because I'm teaching part-time. So I'm spending a lot more time developing courses, developing me as an individual, developing in terms of being a mentor and a coach, even more so, and implementing a lot more self-care than I was. So one of the things I'm hoping to do is finish this book by November. She said that with a smile. A big smile, right? So that's for me the future in terms of continue to develop, to continue to transform, continue to learn and grow, and finish writing my book. I've got 2 more books in my head with titles. So it's like I cannot wait to finish this one, to continue writing because I have neglected that aspect of me in terms of writing. Because I read a lot, but I don't write as much as I used to. Because when I was based at the school or as a college, I had that time to write because you're on staff, you have break, etc. But I don't feel that is conducive for me now as an individual. Being in a school, it doesn't allow for growth. Mandy, does that answer your question?
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Yeah. Any more questions, Mandy? No?
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much, Debbie, for joining me for afternoon tea.
Thank you very much for having me onto the program. I really do appreciate that, and I really enjoyed it. Thank you, Mandy, for your questions. You know, I actually have, you know, in my head a number of things I need to expand on, you know, because Mandy have dropped a few nuggets through her questions. So thank you very much for those questions. You know, they were fantastic. It actually made me, you know, reflect a lot.
You're welcome. Nice to meet you.
Yes, really nice to meet you
Thank
too.
you very much.
Okay, I'll end the